If you play online games, and we kind of assume you do since that's our bread and butter, lag compensation is something you would have experienced. Whether it's worked for you or against you, it would have been there. In this video, we'll be covering exactly what lag compensation is and why it happens in online games. Later on, we'll show you some examples of lag compensation in action so we can take a closer look and really explain why it works the way that it does. In our examples, we're going to be playing Valorant, but like we said, if you're playing any online game, then lag compensation will probably work in a similar way. But first, what is lag compensation? It's a process game devs incorporate into their netcode to try and make sense of different player perspectives during online matches. That sounds like a lot, so before we dive into what lag compensation actually does, it's important to know what ping is. Ping is the time it takes for a packet of data to travel from your PC or console to the game server and then all the way back to you. It's measured in milliseconds, or ms for short. Now, everyone in a match has different amounts of lag depending on that ping. Higher amounts of ping mean more lag. Things like the amount of congestion on a player's network or how close or far away they are from a server they're connected to will determine that ping. But no matter what, it always takes a certain amount of time for a player's game to communicate the actions with the game's host. It's up to the host, usually a server nowadays, to decide the most accurate outcome. In the name of fairness, there's no real way to choose one player's perspective over someone else's. Here's a visual example of this in Valorant. We've greatly exaggerated the difference in player location for the sake of this example. Lag compensation works by compiling the multiple perspectives of game states in a way that's fair and possible for everyone in the lobby. So there's what I see, what the other player sees, and then what the server sees, which is somewhere in the middle. Okay, now we've cleared that, here's some actual examples of lag compensation in Valorant. We used our test lab to set up two networks, one with low ping and one with high ping. We recorded both players' perspectives to be able to see how the difference in latency would affect the gameplay. It's worth saying that in the high latency network, we've used a higher ping than usual for the sake of demonstration and to add clarity to the video. However, it wouldn't be uncommon to see ping spikes like this in a congested network. So we have two perspectives with a few gunfights. The low latency player's perspective is on the left and the high latency player's is on the right. All the clips were recorded using the same two network setup, but across different maps and lobbies. In this first set of clips, we can see the low ping player getting compensation over the high ping player. This is clear due to the location of the enemy player at the time the kill appears on screen. If we watch the clip from the low ping player's perspective, you can see the enemy is clearly out in the open and the kill looks totally fair. But if we take a look at the high ping player's perspective, they'd probably assume they were safe since they made it behind cover on their screen. But we can see this isn't the case, as on their screen it appears they've been killed behind cover. So let's look at the reverse scenario, a high ping player shooting at the low ping player. It's worth saying again that some of these shots are misses as we aren't exactly pro Valorant players in the office, but as you can see, some of these shots should have hit and therefore led to a kill. These examples show lag compensation doesn't just give high ping players an advantage based on their poor connection. In fact, the only way a high ping player can get compensation is by heavily altering their gameplay. As you can see from these clips, the high ping player is having to lead their shots to account for the delay in their connection. So lag compensation is pretty obvious in these exaggerated test environments, but what would it look like in an actual game? We set the test networks to more typical ping values of around 20 milliseconds for the low ping player and 100 milliseconds for the high ping player. Due to the smaller difference in ping, the lag compensation will be less noticeable, so we slowed down the clips to make it easier to see. You can still see that from the high ping player's perspective that the character model is still in a slightly different position compared to the low ping player's perspective. That difference feels a lot more minor, but it can mean all the difference when it happens in a clutch scenario. So it might not feel great, but given the differences in ping, it's the fairest solution to a tricky situation. If things are feeling like this a little too often for you, the best way to get responsive and accurate gameplay is by shortening your communication time to the game host or server, and that means a lower ping. Since lowering your ping is kind of our specialist subject, it's probably a good time for us to mention Netduma OS, our very own router software that has tons of powerful features to make sure you have the best ping you possibly can while playing. If you want to know more, check out the other videos on our channel to learn about how we can help you out with that. But that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching till the end of the video. Hopefully you have a better understanding of how lag compensation impacts your gameplay, and maybe it makes those round the corner deaths a little easier to stomach. If you still have questions about gaming lag, we have tons of other videos on our channel covering all kinds of different topics, as well as lag fix guides on specific games. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.